Welcome to this third part of the section entitled the syllable. You remember that we tried to make this correspondence between the rules and the constraints which govern the beginning of words and the end of words. These constraints are the same for syllables. They also govern the beginning of syllables and the end of syllables. So this is what he's saying here. Recognizing a parallel between word structure and syllable structure, Graham 1970 proposes three principles to determine the syllabification of problematic words. So first of all, you have to remember that we have tried to identify this parallelism between word structure and syllable structure. You remember we said that, for example, the possible sequences at the beginning of words are also possible as beginning sequences of sounds, in syllables. And what is allowed at the end of words is also allowed at the end of syllables. So, in other words, as I have just mentioned, I'm going to repeat it here, the rules, the constraints which govern the beginning and end of words also govern the beginning and end of syllables. Okay? So, here, depending on this fact, this linguist, Graham here, has, if you like, offered or suggested three principles to determine the syllabification of problematic words. These are the principles. Number one, a principle of maximal open syllabicity. I'm going to show you clearly what we mean by open syllables as opposed to closed syllables, and you're going to understand this through the following slide. Now, number two, a principle of minimal coda and maximal onset. If you don't know coda and onset, I'll be going to introduce them in the next slide, and things will be clear. Three, a principle of the irregular coda here. Now, to see how these principles can be applied, let us first look at the structure of the syllable, and this is going to enable us to understand what we have got in these principles here. So, for phonological purposes, a single division is relevant between the onset and the core. This is the syllable. It contains consonant, vowel, consonant. In this pattern here, we have got the beginning, the consonant that we call the onset. So the onset is what comes before the vowel. This is the V. It represents the peak. Remember that we said the vowel is the center of the syllable. It's the most important element. That's why it represents the peak of the syllable, the vowel here. Now, the vowel, if you like, is included, in the core. The core also includes the coda, the other consonant that comes after the vowel here. So look, this first consonant is this one in here. It comes before. It is called the onset of the syllable. The most important part of the syllable, the vowel, is the peak, what you call the center. It is found inside the core. The core also includes the coda, the other consonant that comes after the vowel here. So this is, if you like, the structure of the syllable. Onset, the core, which includes the peak and the coda here. So what comes before the vowel is the onset, what comes after is the coda here, and this is the peak. So remember this structure here. Now, a CV syllable, which means a syllable which is composed of a consonant and a vowel, has a core with zero coda here, which means there is no consonant after the vowel, no coda here. A CVC syllable has a core with V peak and coda. This is the V peak and the coda. Notice that we don't give importance to the onset. It's not important. That's why we say here the initial consonant, that is the onset, is irrelevant in determining the phonological properties of syllables. That's why we're going to disregard it here. Okay, so we are going to talk about different kinds of syllables. We can talk about open syllables, okay, that are not followed by consonants. For example, we have got consonant vowel. The vowel here is not followed by any consonant. Therefore, the syllable here is open. Same thing here, fa. I mean, we have got the long ah here without consonant at the end. More, same thing here. We have got, and the three, syllables in here, represent open syllables because there is no consonant after them. So this is the type of open syllables. Now, the opposite of open syllables is closed syllables, which means they are checked or arrested by consonants. Look, not. At the end here, we have got a consonant after the vowel. So, this syllable is a checked syllable because at the end we have got a coda here. Meat, same thing here. After the vowel, we have got the consonant. So, remember please, we have got open syllables and we have got closed syllables. Open syllables where there is no consonant immediately following the vowel. Closed syllables where we have got a consonant, okay, that arrests or checks, the syllable here. So if you like, we can go back to this here. Open syllabicity, maximal open syllabicity, which means we should keep as much as possible the syllable open. We should avoid to put, if you like, the syllable after the vowel. This is a principle of maximal open syllabicity. Now, a principle of minimal coda and maximal onset. Okay, minimal coda, which means we can minimize the consonants in the coda, and we try to have the maximum in the onset. This is the second principle here. Now, the third principle, the principle is irregular coda. The coda can bear the irregular patterns more than the onset, and we are going to see them through examples here. Now, by the first principle, remember the first principle says a principle of maximal open syllabicity. So, by the first principle, a syllable boundary is inserted after every vowel of a word to keep it open. Okay? So, for example, rooster, we have got roo, and this is here the division, the boundary. St. Master, we have got ma, and we have got st here. So what do we have here? We try to keep the syllables open. This is what we say maximal, open syllabicity here. So look, ru and ma, and the onset of the next syllable we have got double consonant, st here. Now, this principle creates problems because we have got a restriction, we have got a constraint, we have got a restriction on the distribution of some vowels in English. Okay, what is this restriction which governs the distribution of vowels? These vowels, this one and this one and this one and this one, are disallowed in word final position. Which means if we cannot find them at the end of words, we are not going to find them at the end of syllables. Remember, what governs the end of words also governs the end of syllables. Therefore, the words should be resyllabified. We have to to divide again the word, in another way. So therefore the words should be resyllabified by the second principle. Remember the second principle, what does it say? A principle of minimal coda and maximal onset. So minimal coda, look, first of all here it was open here, ma, Now we try to just, to join only, if you like, the minimum here. Only one consonant is going to be removed from the onset of the second syllable, and it's going to join, if you like, the vowel here, the second syllable, to become the coda in here. So the minimum here. So it's going to be mas t here. In this way, we are going to solve this problem of this restriction, because this a is a vowel that we cannot find at the end of English words. So we cannot find it at the end of English syllables. So this is, I feel like, a wrong division of this word. So what are we going to do here? We have to, to take this s from the onset of the second syllable and to join it to the coda of the first syllable here. In this way, I feel like we solve the problem of this division here. So we obtain mas and then t here. Now, Fulgram states this is an explanation of what we have done in here. If a syllable cannot be kept open because its vowel does not occur in word final position, then as many consonants as necessary, but no more, to provide the syllable with a permissible coda, thereby removing the vowel from the syllable final position. Okay, must be detached from the onset of the next syllable and transferred to the preceding syllable. This is the main bit that I would like you to concentrate on in here. We detach the consonant from the onset, okay, of the next syllable and transferred to the preceding syllable. This is what we have done here. We have taken this s from the second syllable here, this one, and we have moved it to the first syllable to become the coda in here. This is what we have written here. The syllable, a consonant must be detached from the onset of the next syllable and transferred to the preceding syllable in order to solve the problem. Now, in other words, consonants must be detached from the onset of the next syllable and transferred to the preceding syllable. This is what we did in here. Another readjustment. If the syllable cannot be kept open because the consonants that would form the onset of the next syllable do not occur in word initial position, then as many consonants as necessary, but no more, to reduce the onset to a permissible word initial shape must be detached from it and transferred to the preceding syllable as coda, thus closing the syllable. Look here, constraints. We have got two syllables in here. Now, by means of the first principle, we are going to leave this first syllable open, and we are going to have strains in the second syllable. Now, this sequence of sounds n, s, t, r cannot be found in the initial position of words. Therefore, they cannot be found in the initial position of syllables. Remember what governs as a constraint. The structure of a word also governs the structure of the syllable. So, we have, to work by means of the second principle. We are going to remove this first consonant from the onset here of the second syllable to join the first syllable to become the coda in here. And we're going to obtain this division here, constraints. Of course, this st-r is a possible sequence at the beginning of English words. Therefore, it's also possible, a possible sequence to be put at the beginning of English syllables here. Therefore, this division is better than this one in here. Constraints here. Look, employ, another example. By means of the first principle, we are going to keep this syllable open, and we are going to obtain employ. Of course, no word begins by ml. Therefore, we should revise this division, and we have to work by means of the second principle, which means we have to remove, okay, as you know, if you like the minimum here, we have to remove at least one consonant from the onset of the second syllable, and to make of it the coda of the first syllable, employ. So this is what we have done in here, what is being said in here. If the syllable cannot be kept open because the consonants that would form the onset of the next syllable do not occur in word initial position, then as many consonants as necessary, but no more, to reduce the onset to a permissible word initial shape, must be detached from it and transferred to the preceding syllable as coda, thus closing the syllable. This is what we have done in here through these examples. Now, here each syllable meets the word structure constraints of English here. Now, program's final principle, you remember the third principle, which says a principle of the irregular coda. Here, Program's final principle is stated as follows. If the necessary transfer from syllable initial to syllable final position leads to an inadmissible syllable final group of consonants, then the burden of irregularity must be borne by the coda rather than the following onsets. So, which means, okay, let me explain this through this example, and I'm going to comment on it. This is a verb taken from Spanish, transcribir. By means of the first principle, we have to keep the first, if you like, syllable open, and we are going to obtain transcribir. And we have got a problem in this case. N, sk, and r, a sequence of 4 consonants cannot occur word initially in Spanish, which means no Spanish word can begin by this sequence of sounds. Now what shall we do here? The N must be transferred to the first syllable to yield transcribir. Okay, so instead of saying transcribir, the N will be removed from the onset of the second syllable, and it's going to become the coda of the first syllable here. This is what we have got in here, transcribir. Still, we have got a problem in here. This skr as an initial sequence of words here is not acceptable in Spanish, word initially, because of course you remember that the word school, if you give it a Spanish person to pronounce it, he will pronounce it with a vowel before it. So that's why school in Spanish, it is pronounced, or it becomes escuela. So an initial S is not allowed in Spanish. So here the solution. This S here at the beginning must be transferred to the first syllable, and we're going to obtain trans, and the division in here, and the second syllable is going to contain cribir. And still we have got another problem in here. Ns, this ns, cannot occur word finally in Spanish, which means it is something which is irregular. Now the result, the syllabification trans as a first syllable, cribir as a second syllable, is preferable to transcribir, since the coda is more capable than the onset of allowing violations of word structure constraints. If there is any violation of the constraint or the rule, it's in fact the coda that is going to bear the irregularity, that is going to violate the rule more than the onset. Okay, so if there is any problem, we have to give it, if you like, to the coda and to remove it from the onset in here. So this is what is being said, in the third principle, a principle of the irregular coda here. Now, we have finished this section talking about the syllable. Later on, I'm going to provide you with a lecture explain to you the third chapter that we have got in our program, which is morphology.